But the Rugby World Cup is only a few days away, and in this video we will be doing our Springboks preview for their upcoming Rugby World Cup 2023 campaign. In the video we will look through at the Rugby World Cup squad, the fixtures that they have got coming up, their previous ones leading to the World Cup, and then at the end a prediction for how we think the Springboks will go. But we will jump straight into it. Their squad, it was announced relatively early, and they have got a very strong looking team heading towards France. For the props, it is Steven Kitshoff, Vincent Koch, Frans Malherbe, Oxner Shea, and Trevor Nakanye. So opting to go with only the 5 props. And even though they've gone with the 5, they have still got a huge amount of talent throughout those 5 individuals. I'm looking for a big World Cup from Steven Kitshoff. Also, I feel like Frans Malherbe will be the first choice option at tight head prop. And I guess it's more of that question of what side Trevor Nakanye will be needed on, whether that will be loose head or tight head. For the hookers, they have only gone with the 2. It is Bongio Manambi and Malcolm Marx, and that is a similar situation of we're not too sure whether or not they will look at Malcolm Marx as an impact player coming off the bench. I think a lot of people prefer seeing him in the starting side, seeing as he is such a world-class player, getting over the ball, 100% line-out accuracy is not a rarity for this man, and I'm sure he will be scoring a fair few tries throughout this Rugby World Cup campaign. For the locks, it is Eben Etzebeth, Jean Klein, who hasn't got himself too many caps as of yet after recently transferring to the box, Marvin Ori, and RG Snyman. Now, Snyman's been used more of an impact player off the bench. Etzebeth and Jean Klein both fighting for that number 4 jersey, and then now they've got Mostert added into the equation for the locks as well. But the loose forwards, Peter Steph-Toy, Sia Khaleesi recently returning back from his injury. He is also going to be captain for this Rugby World Cup campaign. Kwaka Smith, Marco van Staden, Dwayne Vermeulen, and also Jasper Wiese. So at the moment, the strongest 3 in a lot of people's opinions would be Sia Khaleesi at 6, Peter Steph-Toy number 7, and Dwayne Vermeulen at number 8. And I have to say, no matter who they go up against, if you see those 3 men across from you, you know it's going to be a hard day at the office. Utility forwards, Dion Fourie, as well as Franco Mostert. Now, I know that a lot of the talking around the Springboks squad selection was definitely talked about when it came to these halfbacks. The fact that they did have 4, although so far from the performances we've seen from the Springboks, hasn't looked like a bad thing. The scrum half options, Faf de Klerk, Jaden Hendrickse, Kobus Reinach, as well as Grant Williams. And they have been pretty much rotating between those 4 throughout the Rugby World Cup warm-up games, making sure no one's overworked before heading into the big competition. For the fly halves, Mani Lebok, as well as Damien Valimzo, although Lebok, after the last performance up against the All Blacks, I believe has well and truly solidified his spot at number 10. And then alongside that, Damien Valimzo getting man of the match up against the ABs, playing at 15. I think that pretty much says where those 2 should be playing. In the centres, Damien Dialende, Andre Esterhuizen, and also Jesse Kriel. 3 players that all have the capabilities of having fantastic games. You'd have to say that the one who's maybe a little bit out of form out of those 3 would be Dialende, but I believe that with that experience, they will still look to give him a few more minutes throughout this Rugby World Cup, although I would love to see Andre Esterhuizen get that start at 12. Looking at the outside backs, Kurtley Arendse, Cheslin Colby, Vili Larue, Makazole Mapimpi, and also Kanan Moody, who has been in some tremendous form, played at outside centre in the last game. I believe it's been talked about that he will be playing more out on the wing throughout this Rugby World Cup, but if there is any sort of injury to someone like a Jesse Kriel, I'm sure Moody would well and truly be able to fill that spot. But that is the 33-man squad that the Springboks went with heading into this Rugby World Cup. At the moment, it seems like there are no serious injuries amongst the Springboks camp, which does mean everyone is available heading into this first game of the World Cup, and that will be up against the Scottish, transitioning into the upcoming fixtures for the Springboks of this World Cup. The first game that they play as a part of Pool B will be up against Scotland. This taking place at 3:45 a.m. New Zealand time on Monday morning, or it is a 5:45 p.m. kickoff for anyone in South Africa. On the Sunday, their next game is up against the Romanians. That will be a 1 a.m. New Zealand kickoff, 3 p.m. in South Africa on the Sunday. Also, I'm expecting a very one-sided affair in that game between the Boks and Romania. And I guess that is a perfect opportunity for the Springboks to rest a few players who they feel will be crucial in the next contest, as well as getting a few people's confidence up. Their next game, it is a massive one, South Africa taking on Ireland. Now this game will actually be a 10 p.m. kickoff in South Africa on Saturday night, So a relatively late night kickoff, seeing as the games are taking place in France, but that will be an absolutely awesome game. I'm expecting a real test match feel when those two sides collide, and it could be a very close affair. And then the last game of Pool B that the South Africans will have for themselves is up against Tonga, also a 10 p.m. kickoff time in South Africa on the Sunday, and that will be their last game of the pool stages. So if South Africa are able to get themselves out of that group, which at the moment does seem like they are very likely to be able to do, they will move through to the quarterfinals, and then from there hope to progress towards the final. But looking through at the previous fixtures for the South Africans, they've had a few Rugby World Cup warm-up games, and they are the games that we are specifically going to be diving into. The first of which was up against Argentina. Now, they did play them in the Rugby Championship. This was the rematch taking place only a week later. 24 points to 13 in favour of the Springboks. There was quite a bit that they did need to work on from that performance. But then in that next game up against Wales, which was only 2 weeks later, they were able to show major improvements there. 52 points to 16. Fantastic win, and they were looking very strong. Desi Creel had an absolutely outstanding game in that contest, and he wasn't even a part of this next win for the Springboks. There were plenty of players who did step up and had brilliant games. That was in the game up against the All Blacks. 35 points to 7, the biggest losing margin that the All Blacks have ever had. And the Springboks, they were able to do it with ease. They were looking clinical. Their backline was firing. Like I mentioned, Damien Valimza having the man of the match performance. Kane and Moody at 13, Andre Esterhuizen at 12. That is a young combination that I'm looking forward to seeing in the future for the Springboks. The 4-pack, they were physical, the scrums were dominant. Everything that the Springboks could do well, they were doing well, and it was certainly shown with the scoreboard. So to say that the Springboks will have a lot of confidence going into this Rugby World Cup, probably a little bit of an understatement, and you can understand why they would have confidence with the performances that they have had over the last few weeks. But now we are up to that stage, trying to predict how the Springboks will go throughout this Rugby World Cup, and we will say exactly where we think they will finish. Now, there will be a video coming out on the channel in the near future where myself and Rugby Itch, we go through all of the Rugby World Cup games, give our score predictions for each and every one. I did pick the Springboks to top their group, and due to that, they were going to be playing up against France, in my opinion, for the quarterfinals. Now, of course, that is subject to change. It could be South Africa taking on New Zealand, which would be an absolutely massive rematch for the sides, and actually a nice close to the trilogy, seeing as they have already played twice this year and both sides have got themselves one win. But in the way that my predictions went, it was going to be South Africa-France in the quarterfinals, and I felt the Springboks would get themselves a victory there. They would then be moving on to the semis, where I did actually have Wales, which I'm not sure how they got there in my overall predictions, but somehow they did. I had the Springboks winning comfortably in that game, and then it was going to be the final where they were taking on New Zealand, which I feel would be a much better way to finish the trilogy rather than it being in the quarterfinals. And I did predict the Springboks to win that game 24 points to 22, so I could be a mile off. Perhaps I've hit it right on the nose. We will have to wait and see, but do let me know in the comments who you think will be the standout player for the Springboks throughout this Rugby World Cup in 2023. Also, let me know whereabouts you think the Springboks will finish throughout the Rugby World Cup as well. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We have got plenty more rugby content coming in the near future, whether that is lineup announcements, previews, reviews, and also the live commentary for the matches of the Rugby World Cup. But thank you all very much for tuning in. I will see you all for the next one.